In the middle of the night, while CNN producers were dreaming of their next stormy headline, President Trump welcomed home 3 Americans imprisoned in North Korea. And he did it to great ratings.
I think you probably broke the all-time in history television rating for 3 o'clock in the morning, that I would say. This is a special night for these 3 really great people. And congratulations on being in this country. Thank you. I want to thank Kim Jong-un, who really was excellent to these 3 incredible people.
I never thought I'd hear that. But then again, I never thought we'd have a former reality game show host running the most powerful country in the world ever. But that reality and the reality of this morning's release are actually connected. First, the release. What does it mean? An end to the North Korean nuclear threat with happier days ahead for all of us? Obviously, it's too soon to tell. But you'd have to be in your own prison of emotional bias not to see this as a promising step in the direction of a safer world. Right, Chuck?
It is so troubling to hear President Trump say that Kim Jong-un treated the Americans excellently. Their release should not be exalted. It should be expected.
What a wet blanket. But enough about his hair. Anyway, this development puts things in perspective. While news anchors take turns acting shocked over a porn star tryst, 3 Americans are free. And that's the point. Once you get past Trump's unseemly past, you see that it's his entire past that reveals his talents. What America elected is a person with a unique toolkit for a unique time, someone tough-minded enough to engage rogue regimes in terms that they understand. Carrot and a real stick, not fantasies. Who knew that what we needed most was a reality TV star who actually deals in reality? So I wonder, would those freed people have preferred a squeaky clean president fretting alone in the Oval Office as they sat in a foreign jail? Or a billionaire tycoon who's not the best husband, but could talk a bear off a fish truck? You know the answer. All right, Kennedy, welcome to the show.
Hey.
You look great in pink, as always. Why is this working? Because it seems to be working.
Because, it's objectively good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is very difficult for anyone to argue that this is not a good thing. And, it's interesting and very predictable that people will certainly try.
Right.
And I think that the visual was great of that plane landing at Joint Base Andrews and the president and the vice president and the first lady and the secretary of state there to welcome 3 people whose lives in recent history is absolutely unimaginable to Americans. Not the 1% and not those who are comfortable, but to all Americans. We cannot fathom what life is like in those labor camps because very few people get out to tell the story. If you remember at the President's State of the Union address, one of the most moving parts was the man who had escaped North Korea and took his crutches and that embrace of freedom. And it's a continuation of that narrative that is manifesting in very real terms. Regardless how you feel about the president or who you voted for, you have to stop and realize that this is a great moment for our country and for peace.
Jesse, you know what I liked about it was that it was at 3 a.m. Because it feels like Trump saying, I don't sleep. I'm always up. Hillary would have been in bed by now.
He was up for the 3 a.m. phone call.
Yes, perfect. Yes.
So, and great ratings, as he mentioned, from here to the mouth. And I'm sure the ratings were really good. I mean, it was a significant olive branch from Little Rocket Man ahead of this Singapore summit. And he deserves a little bit of credit. I know if Obama had said they were treated excellently, people on the right would have said, what are you doing talking like that about a dictator? But I think that's just Trump's way of negotiating. He fluffs their ego and then he cuts them down when he needs to. That's great. I think it's a big distinction about how Obama dealt with these things. Remember, Obama got a detainee back, but he had to give up 5 terrorists from Gitmo. Mm-hmm. We didn't have to give up anything. Yeah. So this is a significant departure from the last administration. I think this president has put a real priority on bringing back American detainees. We got them back from Egypt, from Afghanistan, from North Korea, even the ungrateful basketball players from UCLA that came through China, they came back. So he's employing the George Costanza method.
Yes.
And what I like to say is whenever Obama did something, Trump does the opposite in North Korea, in Syria, in Iran, and it seems to be working, Juan. It's funny, though, the media is not accountable for all the false things they predicted would happen with North Korea. They said we're going to alienate our allies, South Korea and Japan. We weren't going to get China to help us out. We were going to go to war.
Yeah.
And that Pompeo was not a good diplomat. All of those things have turned out to be wrong. The media is like a bad weatherman. Every day they come out and they say it's going to rain, and every day it's clear skies and sunny. But they never apologize or get fired.
So, Juan, from a scale of 1 being awesome to 10 being super, super, super,
here we
super
go.
awesome, where would you put this?
Super, 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 super. Gosh, imagine
catching
any of
on.
us in that situation.
Yeah.
You want out, and you want out for Americans, and it's good. The part that amuses me first is the business about ratings. Clearly that's what it's there. So it's all about the appearances, about his political popularity. It's about, Republicans will celebrate. Let's put down Chuck Schumer for stating the obvious, that what you really want here is that Kim Jong-un wouldn't be holding Americans and treating them so badly, and we shouldn't be calling him excellent or anything. Jesse, I would just say to you that, in fact, we did give something to Kim Jong-un. What we've given him is a summit. We are putting him on the level with us, the United States of America. He has wanted this across administrations. Previous presidents have denied it to him. He is thrilled that he is seen as a world leader equal to our president.
So what was the Obama policy on North Korea? To do nothing and let them nuke up?
We did not do nothing. We
Yes,
had
he absolutely did
Nuclear-
nothing.
No,
No,
we didn't do
proliferation.
nothing, but we didn't have any solution, and I think that's why
This summit is a result of sanctions and tough rhetoric.
I think, it's a result of actions taken in terms of prior sanctions. These sanctions are in place, but I also think
all
it's
of
the
our
result.
allies are very happy with the summit, Juan. I
Yes,
thought
let me
making
just-
sure our alliances were strong.
Let me just say, though, I think that when you look at Kim Jong-un, what he is building towards, I think, is the idea of the United States accepting North Korea as a nuclear power. Every other American president has said no to this.
Okay, I don't know
So
where
we'll
you're
see
going
where
with
this
this.
goes.
with the peace prize.
There is an evidence to support that statement.
Kimberly,
whatsoever.
when Trump gets the peace prize,
Yes, when he
will
gets
Juan
it.
finally say, okay? But anyway.
Mark the date on your calendar. But also, if you just go back on this and you look at some of the Korean, Japanese media reports, etc., this was something that Kim Jong-un did reluctantly. Of course, he did not want to release 3 American hostages. He did so because of the unique and non-conforming diplomatic policy and procedures that the president engaged in. This was something that was unsettling to Kim Jong-un, not something that he was familiar with. And President Trump tried a different approach, which has produced a significant and historical result. And when you take a look at this situation, why wouldn't any American say this is a very, very favorable, very auspicious result that happened here? I look at the screen and I see 3 healthy Americans that thought that they didn't have a chance, and they were able to come home to this country. Thank God. Juxtaposed to that, poor Otto Warmbier and his family, and I don't want to forget about him and the suffering that he went through. So really to take a moment to say, we're very appreciative as a country, and we're grateful for this kind of diplomacy that resulted in them being returned.
And think
healthy.
about the children and the
family,
babies who were killed in front of their parents in
Awful.
those North Korean labor camps. It's awful. And, Juan, to your point, those on the left have been saying throughout this process, especially when the rhetoric did get heated. And there was so much unpredictability that even, people who support the president didn't exactly know where we were going in terms of North Korea. But it seems to have worked out. You say that no president has gotten to the point where they're meeting with Kim Jong-un. Well, no president has been on the precipice of a real peace.
Oh, no. No. Clinton, Bush both thought they had deals, either with his father,
the six-party
grandfather.
talks and the Sunshine
so
Policy
we've
and
been through a lot of this
strategic
before,
patience.
Kennedy.
It's all hot malarkey compared to.
No, it's not.
That's a
I think
technical term.
Definitely
they
right.
all said no because guess what? They knew how North Korea ran those prisoner camps. They know how North Korea treats its own citizens.
That's not true.
And
they offered
don't
more
want
concessions in energy and relaxing sanctions ahead of talks. That's what they did. They actually gave concessions ahead of time, and then North Korea made promises that were unverified, and they were
Correct.
very naive
In
and
other
trusted
words-
that. But the one thing you can say about this process is that has been reversed. So
How is that reversed?
because Kim Jong-un actually gave up something before both parties
You're
came
wrong.
to the table. I'm not.
How about this? In November, he had his 3rd intercontinental ballistic test under this administration. So and thinks that he has completed now preparations for a complete nuclear arsenal. So you stop and you think to yourself, well, wait a second.
What's better? Bombing him and bombing all the sites
Listen,
where he's creating those weapons, or going to the table and trying to
That's not the discussion we're having
create
at this table.
some goodwill
At
between
this
North Korea
moment,
and South Korea to reunite the Korean Peninsula?
I'm all for reuniting the peninsula at some point if we can get a regime in North Korea that is not torturing people, that is
So now
not
Democrats want
criminal.
regime change?
Hang on, let me speak for a minute. So what you get here is a situation where you have a guy who has nuclear weapons that he's been testing under this administration. We have previous administrations that thought they had a deal. Now we have President Trump with his rhetoric, and we don't know what kind of deal. But what happened with these 3 prisoners, as much as we appreciate our people coming home, is not to be seen as, oh, this is a radical change. He's released prisoners before.
I think this is why the American people don't like Washington, because you have people like Juan and Crying Chuck who will not give credit where credit is due.
What is the credit?
I remember when Obama killed bin Laden.
Yeah.
And a lot of Republicans gave credit where credit was due.
Yeah.
The Navy SEALs. Just kidding, Juan. But I think there's a spirit of bipartisanship when it comes to foreign policy that used to exist in this country, when good things happened to America and American citizens, and people were moving toward peace. Let's just remember, they just signed something that said that they wanted to end the Korean War.
Yeah.
The Korean War, since 1951, to sit back and nitpick about some of the things that we're talking about here looks small, and it just looks partisan.
And now we're KG. The stage is set for Singapore, so this is moving.
Yes, absolutely. July 12th, and if you look at the approval number of Americans favorably wanting this to happen is 77%. So, Juan, I just beg to differ, because to me it seems like Americans are for this. We are for peace. We are for diplomacy. We're sitting down. He's not afraid to break the modern rules of diplomacy and go to this and get at it in a different angle to produce the best result.
And if
you have to be willing to do that.
I don't think there's any argument about that, by the way. I think when you say 77, hang on a second.
It doesn't matter what your politics are. Everyone should be for that.
When you say 77%, I think it should be 100%. I couldn't agree more. Everybody wants peace. Jesse's talking about reconciliation between North and South. But there's a difference to understand exactly what is it that we are willing to negotiate with. What are we
going to meet with?
Juan, can I ask you a very quick question?
I'm saying you have to understand. This is what I said to Jesse. When you have this meeting, it is a great concession to the president of North Korea, who has been seen as an international outlet.
That's the inevitability if you're going to deal.
Right. How are we supposed to talk to him then?
You're going to have to elevate the person that you're going to talk to.
That's all.
There's no way around it.
Would Hillary Clinton have brought us to this point?
I hope so.
No, she'd be in bed at 3. She wouldn't have been there at that plane. That's too late.